and say welcome, welcome, welcome. So today what we're going to do is a high-speed, fast and furious, wild adventure into, into the world of sacred storytelling, and specifically working with story as a tool for healing, both for the individual and with the collective. And what I think of this class is it's sort of like we're going to go to the mall. And so, you don't go shopping at all the stores at the mall, but you see all the stores that are available to you. And so this is what it's going to be. I'm going to shoot off a lot of different concepts and ideas. Specifically, how do you work with story? How do you collaborate with story as a sacred tool? And then also we're going to get into how do you then start to connect with ritual as a way of working with what you discover on your path of change and healing and that word transformation. So here we go. I always like to begin by starting with your eyes closed. And again, I can't recommend enough, stories. One of the greatest illusions is that stories come from the storyteller. And that it's like a magic trick, if I've ever seen one. They definitely come through the storyteller, but they also come from the listeners. The listeners are the co-creators. A whole other class that I teach about that. We're not going to do that today, but why I mention that right now is that your presence really calls forth what comes through today. So I really invite you to fully embrace the gift of this hour for yourself and to really play and to bring your paper and your pen and all of your presence as much as you can. Okay, here we go. So I invite you to close your eyes and place your feet on the earth. And as you do that, really becoming aware of where does your energy and your body want to go to. We're diving right in with an intuition exercise right here. This is a beginning to understand, how do you sense? How do you notice? There's no right or wrong way. So for whatever reason, all my attention went right here. Okay, right above, like right beneath my neck and above, like right around my clavicle. No story about that. Yours went somewhere else. So now, knowing that your body, that your energy center pinpointed this location when you ask, where does energy want to go? Now I invite you just to live with that knowledge while taking in some nice deep breaths as you begin to center yourself and ground yourself. And one of the ways that you can do this is you can breathe into the bottom of your belly and imagine your whole belly all the way back like a big balloon. You can breathe and expand into your sides and into your back. Singers sing from their back. So imagine, can you breathe into your back and actually feel it exhale. Inhale and expand. That's what I'm going to be inviting you into, is this idea of expanding past what your normal comfort zone is today. And as you're ready, exhaling, maybe not so rushed, slowly, 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 bringing your belly button all the way back to your spine, pushing out all the stale air. And then as you're ready, taking in a nice deep breath. And then just on your own for a few moments, just taking some more breaths. Calling all of your energy that's been scattered around, thinking about all the different things, all the different needs, all the different wants. Calling back all that energy. Imagine it coming back like gold specks of dust. Entering back into your body as you come more and more and more fully present in this moment. And then just going back to that little energy center that mentioned it wanted your attention. Maybe you want to place a hand on it, or maybe you want to just place your focus on it. And as if you are your older, elder version of yourself, or even more elder if you are elder, and you're looking back 20 years from now, as if you're just such a youngin' in this moment. And you come to that place in yourself and you ask, oh, what is it that needs tending today? With nothing but curiosity and an open heart. And allow the voice to speak, that energy that's asked for your attention. Okay. Maybe not even knowing why it had to be your attention today. So you might have just received some information. So I invite you that if you just heard something from this piece of your energy system, that once intending, if you want to write it down, we might come back to it later on today. And so I invite you into this kind of playful observer way that we're going to work with a lot today. So I also just invite you to set a little intention for yourself. What's calling you here today? What is calling you here today? And I always love to hear everybody's names. So if you feel called to, I really invite you to take yourself off mute and just say your name, your location, and what is calling you here today. These are not lengthy introductions. We are just kind of collecting ourselves, getting to know who are our co-creator alchemists today, and then we're going to dive right into it. Micah, can you start us off with your name, your location, and what calls you here today?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Micah Sun, and my location is about an hour outside of Asheville, North Carolina, in Transylvania County, near Brevard. And what draws me here today is this crystalline desire to like have that magical potentialized dragon egg of sacred storytelling, and to again visit it and gaze into it and let that somehow unfold and dance with me through my life.
Okay, thank you. I invite you just to jump in. Mary, am I seeing you jump in?
My name is Mary, and I'm here from Buffalo, New York. And kind of per usual, I can't quite name why I'm here, except for Spirit dropped in and told me to check about 20 minutes ago if you were doing something. And here we are. Thank you.
Very specific and timely spirit. I like this. Michelle?
I'm Michelle Pittenger. I'm from Central California, and I've come here because I am really quite tapped out and need to be fed by story.
Thank you. Karen?
Hi, I am Karen Murray. I'm from the suburbs of Chicago. I received an email. I don't know how, but I was very intrigued by the title of this class right now. And I know that there's a storyteller in May, so I'm very much looking forward to it.
Valerie, do you feel compelled? We're looking at the sky, I think. Well, Valerie.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Valerie. I live in Kauai. I am very much interested in finding my storyteller voice and, entwining that into my experiences and sharing that.
Great, thank you. I used to live on Kauai.
You did?
Yes, send her my love. I miss her.
Oh, she's the best.
Milana.
Hi. Yes, I'm unmuted. So I'm Milana. I live in Pennsylvania, US, and I came here today, actually ran around like a nut so I could be here this afternoon. And I'm interested in really diving into how to use story for healing and transformation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great, thank you. Tina.
Hi, it's so wonderful to be here today. My name is Tina, and I'm from Vancouver, Canada. I'm a storyteller, and I'm here because the title really triggered me, and I was very curious about the title, and I believe very strongly in the transformative power of storytelling. So I'm here to share and learn.
Okay. Thank you. Hello, Jackie.
Hi, I'm Jackie Reason. I'm in the Bronx, New York, and I just found everything about this workshop. I was curious about it, so I'm here to learn.
Nancy and Valeria, I'm going to respect that you guys are on mute and are in deep listening, but by all means, if you want to pop in or pop something in the chat, you know that your voices are welcome. And so here we go. If you came on when I said that today we're going to go on a galloping pace. I'm going to introduce you to the landscape of storytelling, specifically working with storytelling as a tool for healing and transformation. And here I'm going to start off with a way of playing with Milana, because I used to say, I want to use story. And the more I used to say that, I'm just like, God, it just didn't land right in my body. I'm like, why doesn't that feel good? And so I went to my trusty Bible. It's out of my reach, so I can't bring it to you, my etymology dictionary. And I started tracing the tracks of what that word use means. And I traced it back to essentially enslavement. And so I realized, I was like, oh, I don't want to enslave a story to do my bidding. When I could feel the resonance in that, because like I imagine, it's like when that's not calling forth the full thriving life, vibrant life from something. I want to collaborate with something. I want to come into this collaborative relationship. So I'll start off and we'll make more sense of that, but I just wanted to pinpoint that piece because it's something that I've been playing with for a while. So let's go back to the ancients. And Michael, you could probably do this part of the class by memory, but here we go. He's heard me do this a couple times. So the Hawaiians say that words are so powerful that they can put the world into motion or slow it down. So if you have a chance to go watch the hula dancers, this is an indigenous practice that has not been disconnected, stifled, but not disconnected. And you can still feel what it means to be in relationship with a culture that understands the power of their language and an embodied practice, an embodied collaborative prayer. It's really something to witness and feel. The Sicilians say that words are so powerful, they poke holes in the universe. I think of that every time I get into an argument, it's like, oh, be careful of what you say, because you can't take it back. The Australians say that the stories from the past must be sung to the future, must be sung to the present, so that the future can exist. The Maori say that the words don't describe a thing, that the words are a thing. And all the ancient religions agree that the world is sung, spoken, and chanted into existence. I'm going to say it one more time because just that one concept kind of blew me out of the water. That all of the ancient religions agree about humans' unique role on this earth, that the world was sung, spoken, and chanted into existence. Now, even as I say that, I have to also take 4 steps back at the perspective that says that this is humans' unique role, right? Because humans actually don't, and most humans, I won't say all humans, but many humans can't actually speak the language of the birds or the whales, the elephants, the dogs, or the cats. So they may also be purring, singing our world into existence. But as soon as we say that, we want to just look at the anthropomorphic perspective, that very humanoid perspective of seeing the world that does not include the all. If there's anything that I understand about working with stories as sacred practice and its invitation to connect back to some of the oldest ways of being human, it invites us into that whole perspective of seeing the world larger than just through the human perspective. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So I'm going to ask you guys some questions, and I truly invite you to engage in answering. And there's no right or wrong answer, right? It's just about what is alive in you in this moment. So what is a story? Let's just get on the same page. What is a story? quiet, you're considering. There's no right or wrong answer. We get to play with the game of eloquence. You know what eloquence is? It's not about having to be clever, specific, or on target with your language. It's about that moment of feeling yourself connected to the earth, open to the inspiration, taking that deep breath, knowing when it's your time to speak, and letting it come through.
Story is about listening and play.
About listening and play. So what we're hearing is right. So the illusion is that the story is you know, the storyteller is the one that's telling, but really storytellers are some of the most powerful listeners. And they're reflecting back what's happening in the world around them, or they're steering. And then you're also talking about sacred play, right? So play is an advanced skill. My cats, you know, I have 2 rescue cats that came from foster care, and they couldn't play for the first, you know, month that they were here. They were in this constant state of, you know, vigilance. And I got to really see an embodiment that you have to feel safe in the world. You have to feel protected in order to come into play. And what happens in play, but we stretch our boundaries. So, right, we get to as storytellers, you know, we're coyote medicine, right? We get to trickster, we get to come in and play with the boundaries of what do you really see? Play with your shadow. How far can we take you to see the parts of yourself that you don't want to see, or the parts of society that you don't want to see, because we're in this state of play. So thank you. Anyone else want to talk about what a story is?
I feel like it's the spirit voice of that which wants to come through you from underneath everything that you're experiencing with where you are right now. Every now.
Talk about this presence. Nice. So story is so many different kinds of things. And one of the things that I'm going to play with right now is just to get us all in the same kind of stage, the same play of thinking about how we're working with story. A very unpoetic expression of story is that story is an operating system. And that's that operating system that really teaches you your beliefs, your values, and what you believe is possible. So now think about all the stories that you grew up around, the stories from your family, the stories about yourself, the stories that you tell to others about yourself, the stories that you tell about the world. And now let's thinking about the programming. Right? I just started hearing that like 2 months ago. I've been teaching about stories and operating system forever. And then I started to hear, oh, right, television programming. That's literally what they call it. You know, so now start, you know, taking another step back and say, oh, well, what's the programming that I grew up with? You know, in terms of what was my belief systems about what was possible, what values were instilled. You know, who do you respect, who do you not respect, what do you value, what do you not value, based on the stories that are coming into your world. So now I kind of want to go into something that Micah started to hint at, which is, what is a myth? What is the distinction between a story and a myth? So you want to take a play with that? I'm going to go right back into it for you. So a myth, technically, is a story that has no author. So we know that a lot of indigenous cultures have what we call creation myths, and these are the stories that explain how the world works. But it's not like there's any one person that they know who told that story, or that myth. And so when you really get into what a myth is a myth comes from the land from where it comes from. A myth is, as Micah was kind of speaking to, it's the energy of the land coming through you in the form of a story. So I'm just kind of hinting that a myth isn't just from the ego, it's not from the human perspective, but it's from that animistic perspective of that wholeness. So I'm just going to drop that into our little arsenal of how do we start to think about what we're working with, because now I want to kind of come back to this idea of what is a sacred story? What distinguishes a story as sacred? And what I would play with in this is that this is a story that's sacred, is a story that has the divine living inside of it. So when we use that word sacred, of course, it's a complete and utter setup. Because as soon as I call one thing, one mountain sacred, what the mountain right next to it isn't sacred because I haven't used that language. I don't see the divinity or honor and respect the life within it. But so many have lost that way of living with this earth. And so we have to call on that language to call back that understanding. Hopefully we won't have to use that language anymore. I have a fantasy. Why do we have to keep calling people activists? Why isn't just like, you know, playing an active part in, you know, engaging the world that you live in, just a normal thing that everyone does in the right time. So if we had, what if we just didn't have to use the word activist because everyone did it, but didn't have to distinguish one from another. So it's sort of like my prayers to like, hopefully we won't need the word sacred because it's just going to be something that we come back to in such a way. So when we talk about now we're working with a sacred story, now we're saying, oh, okay, this is a story that is made in collaboration with that muse, that creative life force, the divine. You know, some might call it guides, some might call it ancestors, some might call it the earth speaking out loud. So this is about putting us all kind of on the same playing ground of, okay, so now if we have a sacred story, coming back to the beginning of that class, you know, it's like now we're in collaboration. And so you might tell the story about yourself that you think you know really well. But what if you can actually, you know, when we get off the repeating pattern, that I've told this story a million times, it's always the same story over and over and over again. But what if I say, okay, I want to actually make this a sacred story. And now when I'm stepping into the shoes of being a sacred storyteller, there are a couple of basic principles that I feel are really aligned. One of them is that you are coming in service. So you're coming to give a gift. There's a very specific intention in play. When we work with story so that's when you're ready to deliver, okay? But you might be at a different stage in your own storytelling, or maybe you're trying to work something out. We're going to play at doing that just a little bit. You know, and there's this arc that happens with those stories. So let's say you had a really traumatic event, and this, you know, but let's just say your house burned down. And so the first stage might be, you know, you're trying to work this through, and because you understand that storytelling is one of the oldest ancient forms of how humans connect and engage and move through life, then you might call in some friends and you say, hey, would you listen to my story? Because it needs to be witnessed, it needs to be heard, it needs to be known, it needs to be carried forward where I came from. And so you're asking people to do something very specific with you, to witness, okay? So you're asking to receive. Then you might say, okay, now I'm going to start working with a story, you know, and I'm going to start alchemizing it, and I'm going to start digging, and I'm going to start working as a sacred story, right? Because now I want to actually glean. I want to find all those things that seemed really hard and mucky, and all the monsters. I want to find everything, and I'm going to work it through. We're going to talk a little bit about that in just a minute. And I'm going to shine the gems, and the things that caused harm are going to become my medicine, and I'm going to be stronger because of it. And I'm not the same person over here that I was when that happened. I literally have a different perspective on life, and I have been changed from this. And through that alchemy, all of a sudden, I have learned, I've become a wisdom keeper. I have become someone, right? What do they say? Like, wisdom, knowledge is learned, but wisdom is earned, right? I earned my wisdom on this one. You know, I've got something to share. I've made it through a minefield, and hey, I'm going to throw you the breadcrumbs back through because I know how to get away from a couple things, or jump over that, you know, that barrier, or don't get into that rabbit hole, you know, and I'm going to throw those breadcrumbs behind me as I come forward as a sacred story to give you my story as a gift, you know. So that's the kind of an arc that you might take as if you're working with your own personal stories as a sacred storyteller, or you might be a cantadora, someone who's carrying forward the old stories. A couple of things to think about. Okay, you want to play? You guys want to get into some muckety-muck and go for something? So I created this guidebook called the Psychic Silence Guidebook, and it's a way of exploring what is in your energy field. And what is either preventing you from creating what you came to create, that genius that flows through all of us, or it could also show you what is yours to work with, okay? So I'm going to give you one of the tools, and we're going to get to play with one of these tools as we go on a little hunting. We're going to go on a little excursion and look for your monsters, okay? Because we said that we were going to play with your monsters today. Okay, so this little tool, I'm going to share my screen. And this is your energy map. And this is your energy use map. So you might just want to draw a circle. And it doesn't have to look exactly like this, but you're just going to draw something like this. And, you know, make it into a pie. It doesn't have to be specific. You can just do, you know, a basic pie. And once you've all done that, give me a little hands up so I can see.
How many sections? Just
Doesn't matter.
however.
It's
Okay.
just, you know, you're just doing a little pie. There's nothing scientific about this. You are going to want these little extra lines out here. And once you're done, just give me a little hand so I can see that you're. So imagine, you're going to have to kind of blur your eyes. Imagine this is sort of like a spider web. Okay, this is sort of like the spider web of your consciousness. And what we're going to do is you're going to start playing with what is eating up your, I shouldn't say eating up, what's taking up residency in the real estate of your consciousness. Okay, and how much real estate is it taking? So let's say, oh, I'm really worried about my grandmother. Okay, and I wake up every morning and it's like one of the first things where it kind of nags me or I wish I'd done something. And it might take up three. It might take up three of these little, so I might do a line through all these three and put my grandmother's name on there. Okay, or I'm really worried about this COVID thing. And it's like, I just can't stop thinking about it. And maybe it takes up like 3/4 of your energy field. Okay, so I'm going to invite you to at least get to like 5 things that just keep popping up in your mind. And again, don't think too hard about it. Just like it's that kind of idea of closing your eyes, expanding your awareness. Like it's actually about letting it go a little bit and just seeing what comes. It's those first things that come to you.
Do we put them in one of the pie pieces or just on the side?
No, so can you guys see my arrow on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was just demonstrating it. So what you do is you actually show, it's not just filling up one pie, it's about showing how much space it's taking. So like,
Okay.
if you know, if it's something that's taking up 3/4 of your energy, then show that it's taking up 3/4 of the pie. And it's not like this is literal. It's not like only one thing can take up 3/4, right? You know, it's like, it's not literal. You know, you might have 2 things that are taking up half of your energy. You're just starting to see and you're starting to map out, oh, wow, that little thing that I should be putting a lot of attention to, it's only getting a little 1/10 of my energy, actually. Or, wow, I didn't realize that that thing is taking up 3/4 of my energy, and this is the thing that it's like when you're not thinking, it's always pinging you. It's always coming at you. Issues around integrity will be in here. Issues around value will be in here. Issues around dreams will be in here. Unsettled business often shows up here. Okay, so by now you've probably got a good couple of things filling up your space. And now these little outer lines, these little black guys, these are your little key indicators of what's living underneath that thought form. Okay, so for instance, if I was to say I can't stop thinking about my grandmother, well, there might be, when I look at the core feeling, when I say, okay, well, what's underneath my thought about her? What am I feeling? Oh, I'm feeling guilt. I haven't seen her in a long time. I'm worried that we can't go see her, you know. There's like, and you keep going underneath that. Oh, how often do I feel guilt? You just might want to look at that. Okay, this COVID thing, what are the feelings underneath that? You might start seeing, it's not like you only have one energy that lives underneath them, so you can draw in more of these black lines, but you're going in and follow it through. Does that make sense to everybody? So it's once you realize, oh, this thought form doesn't leave me alone. Now, what is my feeling associated with that thought form? Are we having fun yet? You guys are being very serious. Now, does everyone have a handle of a couple of these? Yeah, okay. Now, in the top left corner, I invite you to write down the name of at least one person who feels like your arch nemesis, your monster, your enemy. Anyone who you think of as a monster. And just, this is a click association, don't think too hard. You know, if you think of a political leader as a monster, just put them down. If you think of an old teacher as a monster, if you think of a parent or a family member, or a neighbor, someone who, the energy of terrorizing you, where you shrink down or you contract around. We're just playing, don't worry, they won't have to stay in that role forever, but let's just place them in that role for the moment. Okay. We all there? So now we get to play. So again, when we talk about play, what is play? But it's an advanced skill. And it's something that you really, it allows you with story, and why I love working with story in this. You know, it's like I got a master's in social work. I used to work as a clinical therapist. And eventually I came really right into story, because story is, it's bigger than that. It lets us get outside the form of the ego, and it lets us call in that form. It lets us enter into the mythic dimension. And one of the reasons why I love working in the mythic dimension when we play with these things is as humans, a lot of us have lost our relationship to that, and all the ancient cultures had a very active relationship with that mythic dimension, understanding that this is one dimension of many realities. And as we became more literate, and as we became more literal, we began to lose relationship with that. So you can listen to our language that will give you the hints of when our separation with the natural world happened. So for example, you know, it used to be Poseidon was the ocean. Now Poseidon is god of the ocean. It's subtle, right? Not so subtle, but now that separation, okay? We used to have, used to be that understood that the gods lived in the earth. Then we had to make temples to them. Again, a separation. So what we're doing as claiming ourselves in this re-emerging art of sacred storytelling is we're also re-engaging with this ancient way of being in relationship with the myth, not as fact, not as something of fiction, but as a part of lived expression. And as storytellers, we're the seers. So we can see between the dimensions. We're actually able to see what can be felt and name and give name to it so that people can actually come into relationship with it. And what we're doing when we're able to see into that mythic dimension and speak to what can be felt but doesn't necessarily have a name yet, we're weaving the worlds together. And as we weave these worlds together and come back into relationship with the multiplicity of all the different archetypes that live within ourselves, we get to have more and more access to our wholeness. That's kind of that's the conceptual, intellectual explanation of what we're about to do. Some people need that, and other people can just go in for a good little play. But that's what that's the game that we're playing in. So now I want to invite you to, who wants to be daring with us and give us a monster? And your play is serving all of us as you name this person.
Kind of hate to jump in. I want people to have a chance, but I've got one, and
Okay.
you're on the clock. These kids at work. I do outdoor education, and I've been in summer camp 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off lately, and gosh, there's times I just not them personally, but I'm just they are getting in the way of my life work. They are blah, blah, blah. They're not, or they'll just be I'll be in mythic mind, and everyone else will be in, just want to play a fun game or something. And so there's this monster of me not gaming and not being, maybe able to just be playful enough, or maybe of feeling this desperate desire to longing to really be doing exactly the thing I'm called to do. So it comes off with these kids at work. The monsters are getting in my way.
Okay, so great. So first of all, we got your script. We got a little piece of your script. They're in my way of me being my best self, the part of me that wants to be most self-expressed. Was there a specific person that does something, or is it just kind of the job is the monster?
There's some specific kids at work that I feel that way about. I love them, but then also they're
okay. So Micah, I'm going to ask you to be super laser focused with me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not say their name just because we want to, appreciate the privacy of what it is. But I want you to think of just one of them and tell us what happens that makes you feel a little bit terrorized. I'm being, I'm playing with that language, but how are they?
Yeah, they're just incessantly, this one person incessantly talking, and won't give space for the contemplative, considerate silence that I so love to live in.
Great. Okay. So now we're going to do something, right? We're going to do a flip. We're going to do with a sumo wrestler. We're going to do a sumo wrestler move. We're going to pick up the monster. We're going to go, oh, bam. Okay. Master teacher. This person is now a master teacher. Okay. Completely recast in a new role. What do our master teachers do? First of all, we sign up to go to our master teachers usually, right? You go to go meet Yoda, right? And so it's when you go to that, they're going to give you. So now you're in initiation. Okay, so you've replayed the story. I'm no longer the victim of the story. I'm no longer being terrorized by this job that keeps me from being what I most ultimately want to be. Okay, now I'm in initiation. Oh, now this is a sacred invitation for me to be my most exalted form of my soul, and this person is coming in service to me to be able to see something that is wanting to come forward that doesn't have any other way yet to be expressed. Okay, you're completely changing the story and reaching. Look at Michael's expression. This is like torture. This is great. So, okay, so now you're taking this being and you're being oh my God, you won't ever let me have silence. It's why can't you just play in the mythic dimension with me and play the way I want to play? So the question might be, oh, how does your listening need to be refined? It's it could be what are they trying to offer you in terms of the listening? What are they trying to teach you in terms of, it's not just my way, right? Maybe there's another way to play into the mythic dimension that's more of an invitation. You're calling out your capacity as a teacher. It's I just, I used to work as a wilderness guide with youth at risk, and I can actively think of some young people that were totally pains in the butts. But I would say that each time I came to that constriction, they were asking me to grow something in myself. And young people ask you to grow something. They talk about sharp sight and sharp shooters. They're such truth speakers. So it's such a privilege to get to work with them, especially if you're on the personal development thing, because you can get away with nothing. So it's when they're pushing, it's also how how are they calling out your leadership skills? Are you pretending that the leader has to be in front when we all know that pack of wolves that the leader actually leads from behind?
Mm.
So it's like they're pushing your edges of being a teacher, and how are they here to serve you? And now take it even to further, how are they serving you as a storyteller and this mythic magical being that you are, wanting to bring people into this? And how are they going to inform the stories that you tell? And how do you create teaching stories either out of what they're doing or literally for them? And how are they calling that part of you out? So I just did all the heavy lifting. Normally I would want you guys to do much more, but again, what I said was, this is a fast-paced introduction and concept of how to start thinking about working with story as a tool for healing. Any questions? Does anyone else want to play with a monster really fast before we move along? It's a quiet Sunday class today. Okay, so let's play. Welcome, Melinda. You caught us right in the middle of a torture chamber class of looking at our monsters and other things. So who wants to play with their psychic energy map, and who wants to show us their map and have us play with it a little bit? Yes, Michelle.
Okay. My computer isn't showing me how to raise my hand on the chat. So, my monster was the president.
Yes, great. So let's just take that, because I think a lot of people have done this. Now, here's one of the things that I would say is one of the biggest traps that our society, especially living in the West, is confronted with, which is that the hero's journey social structure has taken over our way of thinking and being. And one of the things about the hero's journey is that it's a very masculine, patriarchal focus. And when I say masculine, patriarch, we all have the masculine in all of us. We all have the feminine in all of us. So I just want to be really clear about that. And in this it's a very directed masculine approach, right? Because you have to go out into the world. You have to find a monster that you then come into relationship with, conquer, and in that journey, you discover your strengths, you discover your tools, you discover your medicine, and then you go back to and then you slay it, and then you go back and you bring it back to the community. Okay, so there's something in that structure that inherently says this kind of life or death conflict is absolutely wholeheartedly necessary to your expression as evolving as a human. That's part of the story. And that's there are many cultures around the world that actually see that the hero archetype as a very dangerous, narcissistic, self-indulgent archetype. And you actually don't want the hero around. They're risk takers, and they're not always that great for the all. So when we're looking at a feminine structure, where when you look at indigenous rites of passage, it's like the women go into the cave. They go into solitude and silence and stillness and have to deal with the monsters within. So what happens when we live in a structure that only values this hero's journey, where the monster is always outside of us? And so when we look at this situation where we have someone who's on a pedestal, so we get all of our attention up on them, and we have this story that they are separate from us, now all of a sudden we can take, and I'm not saying that you're doing this, but I'm just saying that it's a wholeheartedly possible thing, that we can take all the things that we don't like and we can project them onto this being, or that being is merely serving as a reflection of the things that are already here, and amplifies and makes it possible to see what's already here. But rather than we all place it on them. So you see, it's a very as a storyteller, you have access to take a step back and be like, well, that's one role that person is being. As a storyteller, you might look at the wholeness of them, and you might say, oh, if you're just a reflection, okay, now, great old political leader, how are you my master teacher? And so what are you calling out of me that is ultimately in service of me and my place in this time of massive transition on this planet. You know, if I feel nothing but hate and disregard for you, how can I open up my channels of empathy? Or how can I be so bold as to see the things that I hate within myself that you are showing me, or the things about my society that I don't like, that I have othered? You know, so I think as soon as we make someone into an other, we've lost our role as being sacred storytellers, and we've lost that connection to the whole. And so as sacred storytellers, we have this extraordinary capacity to see the wholeness in all beings. And so how do you then see this being that you've cast as the bad guy, as the villain, and flip it and be like, how are you in service to me and my society? And it's not, this one's not an easy one. You know, I don't talk politics about this. We just look at it through story, you know, but this is, I don't think this is easy for anybody.
I suddenly started thinking about all the loathly lady stories. And maybe he's my loathly, I hate to say this, lovely Lord. But, you know, whatever the masculine equivalent thereof would be. And that's definitely something to play with.
Yeah, and that's the key word here, right? How do we play? You know, I think that what I've discovered is that the second I find myself in a victim story, where I'm playing the victim archetype is very, very powerful. And it's, again, another illusionary character, because the victim archetype would tell you that it has no power, right? That's the biggest baloney of all time. The victim archetype is constantly pulling power by saying that it has no power. So it goes up to others because it says you're the one that has the power, and then it yanks the power from that being. This is why pedestals are so dangerous, right? Anyone puts you on a pedestal, I really invite you to lift them up, because it's a much more fun game, because the laws of balance are gonna play out no matter what. And so it's either you play a bigger game and say there is place for you here, we are on big ground, or you will be ripped off the pedestal. So I really invite you to play at who do you have on a pedestal where you do not see yourself as equal with them? Because that, and how can you start to change your perspective and understand where the power dynamic is inherently out, if they are playing that game with you and allowing you to think that way, or if they're lonely and isolated because you're not willing to meet them where they are. You know, or how are you allowing someone else to see you on a pedestal and kind of feeding off that? And can you say, hey, no, whoa, there's more, there's way so much space for all of us right here. Can we all play together, please? You know, so anytime you catch yourself in that victim archetype, just be aware that you can flip the story, because you're inherently saying, I don't have the power. And so now how can you flip it where you say, oh no, we're okay. So it's like, you're not my villain that's crushing on me. You're my master teacher. So here's one of my favorite stories. This story comes from Carolyn Casey, and I'm going to tell you it as best as I can remember. But she heard this story from a fellow that had been a journalist who had been taken prisoner. And 2 days before, one of his other journalists had been taken prisoners. It was in the Middle East, and had been murdered. So he understands what it means to be taken prisoner. And as soon as he gets in there in jail, and he realizes that he's probably going to get killed very soon. And some part of him just started to flip the story. And rather than treat the guard like his nemesis, he started treating him as his protector. And he started using that language. Notice how a lot of activists started talking about that they were no longer, they started becoming protectors, and how that shifted our consciousness around Standing Rock, around what's going on the Big Island, right? It's just a shift in the word. And so, you know, he starts saying, thank you so much for keeping us safe. Thank you so much for protecting us. It's so dangerous out there. And he kept just kind of rewriting the story right then and there. Now, look, there's real danger in rewriting stories, because it doesn't always work if it's not true. And I can say I have tried to rewrite a story after breaking up with somebody to be what I want it to be, and that did not work. You know? So when we talk about changing a story, there has to be truth in it. You know, there has to be some kind of, but you're also doing magic, right? We speak the world into being. So, you know, when eventually that prisoner the guards actually released them. And as they were taking them out, they were like, we're taking really good care of you. We're making sure that you're safe. They started to take on that role as well. So I always feel like, you know, especially in a time when we've got so many costumes at our disposal, from policemen to National Guard to wearing masks, you know, how can we as individuals know that clothes do not define us? They give us something, it's sure, that it definitely affects and influences how we live in the world, but it's not the defining thing. It's only as defining as we allow it to be. So when we come back to this idea of, oh, that demonized president, like how can we come to the place with like, oh, thank you for showing me all of the injustice that's happening in the world, that it was pretty easy to ignore. It was easier to ignore before for me, you know? And thank you for making it absolutely impossible. You know, this president has called out more activism, more things than any other president in quite some time. So it's like there's a lot of different things happening all at once. And how do we as storytellers see the bigger story, and how can we back it up and start to see the mythos? You know, what if this was and I hate this, you know, but we're just playing we're just going to play with the whole mythos. What if this is actually this energy was kind of like a vaccine into our greater system? You know, kind of purging out, bringing it in just enough to see what our system doesn't want to have in it. Again, I'm sorry to be talking about politics. I want to be so careful about this because again, it's like, we can't help but tell a story from our own perspective. So you're hearing some of my perspective, but it's really important for me to have space for all different perspectives as we enter into this kind of realm and be in respect to all perspectives. So I did have an invitation. Does anyone want to play with their psychic energy use map and just show one pattern, one thing that's taking up a lot of space and one energy form that they were able to associate with it? Nobody wants to play with that? I'm not going to force it on you. Okay.
I'm going to ask where that was because I think I missed that memo.
Yeah, you know what? You came in right after I gave the whole description.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So I won't play with you this time.
Okay. Okay. I'm actually, oddly enough, giving this class again at 4 o'clock today. So you could always pop back in. This class was supposed to be part of this big conference today, and they gave me the wrong time. So I just decided to go ahead and do it for my people who are here, and then I'll do it for the conference people at 4. So there you go. Okay. Well, you're being so shy.
I can try.
Okay.
Okay. So in the inner circle, I have creative expression.
Okay.
And then I have 2 emotions, feelings expressed from that. And I have desire and I have confusion. Is that what you're?
Okay. Can I play with you a little bit more?
Please.
Okay, great. Tell me 4 thoughts that you have throughout the day, things that kind of bother you that you keep, that are untended, that you keep thinking about. So one of them is creative expression.
One of them is creative expression. And then another one is future past. And
give me specific about that. What do you mean? So you're thinking about the future and you're thinking about the past?
Yeah. I mean, it's
how much time do you spend thinking about the future?
Not that much.
Okay, so that's like a 1/4%.
Yeah.
How much time do you spend thinking about the past?
You know, it's like the thoughts come from the past.
Okay. Okay. And so any other, and I'm going to invite you to be like as daring and courageous as you can.
Oh yeah, I'm totally. And then, you know, I guess I have thoughts of like what to do. Like in the moment, like I'm bored. Like there's a thought of like, oh, I should be doing something.
Mm-hmm. And then are there any like issues around being in or out of integrity or anything that is like you wish you should be doing, but you can't stop thinking about it or anything like that? I just want to make sure that you're still.
Yeah, I can't really think of something that like I feel like I'm maybe I mean, I'm out of integrity because I probably aren't taking as well of my body as I could be. So maybe I'm out of integrity in my self-care.
So let's come back to this. Let's come back to your original one, which is creative expression.
Right.
And you had two feelings that you mentioned about it, which were
Desire and confusion.
okay. And what's under, so you've got, so part of it is like your creative expression, like, oh wow, I really want to do this more often. Is that in there?
Right. Well, I've tried a lot of things. Like I tried music, I've tried a lot of different things, and then nothing really sticks. So I'm not really sure. I'm confused about what is my creative expression.
Okay. So I have a little theory about confusion, and it's a really unfortunate one, which is always confusion shows up when you actually know the answer, but you don't like it.
Oh, interesting.
I'm often confused when I'm like, I can't figure out what to do. It's because I know what to do. I'm just not at peace with that answer. So I get really confused because my energy, it's much easier being, in that confusion than having to deal with this thing that some part of me doesn't want to do or doesn't like or agree with or ready for yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I would keep playing with, so let's just take confusion. So we're gonna take confusion on as is to play with it. And so what I would say is confusion, it takes up so much energy. Like when I think of the energy of confusion, I would first invite you to do a drawing of confusion. So we're now working with the energy forms, okay? And so you might want to, like for me, if I were to draw it right now, it would be a piece of knotted up yarn, all squigglies and just knots of energy, all swirled.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would then start thinking about doing is saying, okay, whew, that's not much fun, and so I would then imagine myself at a dinner table. So this is, I'm going to invite you into a process of creative writing and ritual. Okay, so you've got your dinner table and you've invited confusion over for dinner. And so you might begin with like the story of confusion. And who's confusion's parents? Like who birthed confusion? So now you're going into the mythos. You're understanding where does confusion come from? And you're also going to play this game of getting to know confusion as a being, right? As a whole being. Sometimes confusion's good. Sometimes it serves you in some way. And sometimes it's just a brat that's really in the way of you getting to what you need to be doing and being in the most blissful expression of your creative life force.
I get the image of Medusa.
Great.
Like when I look at her, I stop. Like all that, the mirror of Medusa is like me.
Right. So
I turn to stone.
Right. So you might want to invite Medusa down and start to write a story. Now, look, when we start doing a sacred story and we start playing with energies, I really invite you to take it seriously in terms of creating a sacred space. You're calling on the seen and unseen beings. And so you want to also just invite the ones who are in service to your life force thriving, right? So you might want to create a little altar to the story. You might just want to take a moment to pause and say thank you and make an offering. That can look in like a prayer. It can look like offering a piece of your hair or a song or a chant. You can Hawaii, a lot of that's integrated. And so you say, first you come, it's like inviting the muses to the table with you while you sit with Medusa, this energy of confusion, because it's not, I don't want to say that it's dangerous, but I don't want to say that it's safe, so you want to make sure that you are in a way that really serves and protects you. And so now you're working with this energy, and so you might want to ask it, what's it feed on? What does the energy of confusion feed on if it's at your table? What is it asking of you, or demanding, or taking? What is confusion offering?
Mm-hmm.
Who does confusion party with? Right? You got
right.
Confusion. You actually might have invited a few other buddies too, and they might be hiding underneath the table, and you're like, okay, fine. And you put up some chairs for them, and your table just got a little bit bigger because now you got to feed them because confusion brings them with them.
Mm-hmm.
I once wrote a story about love the superpower, love the superpower, something like that. And it had love, it was this being, right, with this gold chain, you know, and it, like, it walks into the bar, you know, it comes with a whole gang, you know. And on one hand, it has romance and generosity and you know, all the great things, companionship, connection, adventure. And on the other hand, it has betrayal and rage and all these other things. And it's like, well, it's just the whole thing. Like love likes to party. It's got a gang. And so you understand that when you party with love, all those other energies come with it. Whether or not you choose to commingle with all of them, you know, it's just like any party. You don't hang out with everybody, but it doesn't mean that they're not all there. So when you start playing with these and start seeing the energy beings, you know, the energy bodies as being a character in your story, now it's like all of a sudden you don't have to take it so seriously, right? You get that perspective. You can take a couple steps back and you'd be like, all right, confusion. Who are you playing with? What am I really working with here? Who are you really in service to? And now you've got a bigger story to play with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's interesting because you've used the word seriously a couple of times. And in the first one, and it really like kind of like punched me, not punched me in a bad way, but like, ooh, like you've got to take this seriously. I heard that. And then later on you said like, do I have to take all of love seriously? And so it was kind of an interesting contrast for me. So there's like a seriousness, but then there's also a seriously? I don't know how else to say it, but I just found that really fascinating that, you know, here, because I love I love words like you love words, the way we look at words, and I call it word gravity. And so, you know, seriously is another word that maybe needs to come to dinner.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And tell me a little bit about all the clothes it likes to wear.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I love that. I love that. I mean, I love that idea of having something serious go on with confusion.
Right. You know, for me, when I do this, I have to party with guilt. You know, when I made my map, I started to realize that very unconsciously, a lot of the things that were taking up a lot of my psychic space that would just kind of ping me nonstop, when I started to trace the origin of the energy that was coming with those thought forms, there were a couple of themes, you know, and so I was like, all right, got it, you know, and then I had to get to know guilt, you know, and all of a sudden as I started to play with guilt, I was like, oh, guilt, you're kind of an interesting energy because you actually constantly ask me to eddy out. You know, here I am on my stream of life, but you know, if I'm on the river and if I'm going to energy of guilt, well, I'm no longer in that flow. You know, and sometimes guilt makes me stop and reflect, or sometimes it's just like in terms of like the gift that it has, and sometimes the energy is actually just kind of a life force zapping energy. If I was just doing what I felt guilty about, I'd be in the flow of life. You know, so this is where you get to really see the energy forms and just. And rather than take it all so seriously, you know, you get to come back and you get to see the wholeness of the whole game and be like, oh, okay, you know, you get to put on your, like, I wish I had the mythic glasses, which gives you 6 dimensions to see the energy forms and how they're showing up. So any other thoughts? And then I'm gonna honor our time and close it out. I'm glad. Yes, Micah, would you make some mythic glasses for all of us? And you're going to give them to your students. And they're going to be like 3D things, and you're going to place the things that they can see with only their mythic glasses on the trees. You can see the whole thing now.
If that's all there was, it'd be horrible.
Any last ideas, thoughts before I carry us right on out of this space today? Okay, so I was just trying to respond to that. Michelle said that she really wanted a story. So I was trying to think of like a little story that I might be able to offer you before we end today. And then what I'll do is I'll offer this short story, And then what I will do is for anyone who wants to continue to learn about ways that you can learn about storytelling, I did something I've never done before, which is I've been doing these things for a while, and a lot of times we'll have people come, they're like, I want in, but I don't know how. So for those of you who want in, but you don't know which channel or which doorway you want to come in, I'm going to show you, I'll just like pinpoint a couple different ways that you can enter into the world of working with story as a tool for healing. And then our day will end. So I'm just listening for which story I'm going to tell you. I wouldn't expect to tell you the story, but I'm going to tell you the story. Okay. So this story begins when I was 4 years old. And my mother was a painter, and she had all these painterly friends and creative artist friends, and they would make things, and they'd be all around our house. And one of those things was this tapestry that had been hand embroidered. And it was of this woman who was giving flowers away. And she was giving flowers away to these little children. And written on top of this tapestry were the words, Leah, like my name was literally like put into it. Leah, give what you have. To others, it may mean more than you dare to think. And I really remember being like a little kid and like just learning how to read and like reading it over and over and over again and not having a clue what that meant. Give what you have. To others, it may mean more than you dare to think. I didn't know what it meant until about 29 years later. I was sitting in a very sterile, cold doctor's office across from this doctor who had just handed me this like very thick contract. And what it was it was a contract that they had just taken a test, and they had discovered that I had thyroid cancer, and it was considered an extreme risk and growing extremely quickly. And so from the time of being diagnosed, within about 15 minutes, they were telling me that not only did I have thyroid cancer, not only was it a very extreme course, but that it was actually growing very close to my larynx, and that I might very well have to lose my voice in the process of getting that surgery. And you have to realize that I was angry about being in the town where I had been diagnosed with cancer. I hated living in Richmond, Virginia. I had gone there because I had gone from living in Arizona to living in Alaska to living in Idaho to living in Montana, and I'd been living this big, beautiful, fun life of being a wilderness guide. And then it came this moment, this kind of height in my moment of really not knowing how to proceed and having so much fear about how to proceed. I had fallen in love with this man, and when we first fell in love, it was beautiful and delicious and delectable, and everything was great. And then we started to discover who we were and where we could grow together and where we couldn't grow together. And I had big dreams. I wanted to go into storytelling. I wanted to become a playwright. I wanted to go to Yale to study playwriting. And he said, you can't do that. And I wanted to write a book. And he said, you can't do that. And I started to realize that the person in the most intimate place in my life, in my bed, in my dreams, was telling me that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And in the course of these conversations, he said to me, you know, Leah, this whole being an artist thing, it's very hard, and you've struggled so much. He's like, why don't you just go get a master's in social work? And you'll have a job that you can work in so many different positions, and you'll always be able to make good money, and you'll never get pigeonholed with some dumb playwriting degree, and just go do that. And I know what some of you are thinking right now, because some of you might be making him into the bad guy. But here's what I know is the truth, that he was speaking my fear out loud. And I made the choice on that day to listen to him. And I made the choice to go to get a master's in social work. And I even made the choice to stay in that school despite how much I really didn't enjoy it or feel like I was in the truth of my real expression of life. So my last semester of school, when I discovered that I had thyroid cancer, that I was going to lose my voice, when my whole fantasy was just to finish that degree and pack my car with everything I owned and drive to graduation and go back to Alaska the moments after graduation. And yet here I was realizing that there might not be a graduation and there might not be much of a life to live on the other side of this. And in that moment, in that exact moment, I started to see something that I had never consciously been able to see, which is that I had unconsciously fully embodied the archetype of the victim. I knew the scripts. I could out-victim story anybody in the room. And in that snap of a moment, I realized I did not want to be that anymore. Because, you know, the doctor, he was about to give me like the tiara. He was about to give me the crown of victimhood right there on a pillow. And I did not want it. And in that choice, it was as if this window just opened right there. And it was my escape hatch. And I had no idea what lived on the other side of it. But like anyone that jumps into an initiation without knowing how to go forward, I jumped right on through. And on the other side of it was laughter. And I started cracking jokes. I just looked at that doctor and I was just like, I guess you just say that to all the pretty girls, don't you? And I started making jokes to every nurse and every practitioner, and every time I had to go to the hospital and take blood work and do anything rather than sob, which is kind of how I really wanted to be. I was just like, we're gonna have fun. I'm gonna find a way to bring joy into the room because this is my life right now. And who do I wanna live with? Maybe it was a coping mechanism. Maybe it was just some act of inspired genius that was beyond what I actually knew how to live with at that moment. But that's how we played. And I came out of that surgery cracking jokes with my voice intact. My doctors had never seen anything like it before. And in that recovery time, the people who I thought would be there weren't always there. The people who I never imagined possibly wanting or calling upon showed up in great force. But the super ally that I will never forget was this amazing garden. The day after I came out of the surgery, I was so hyped up on drugs. Just so you know, a little side note, when you have thyroid cancer, they don't know how much medicine to give you when they take out your thyroid. So some of us get too much and some of us get not enough. And I came out operating on speed. And I had all this energy and I called my friends and I said, hey, let's build a 70-foot circular garden. And they're like, Leah, this is crazy. You just got out of the hospital. And I was like, I know, but I've got all this energy, so let's use it. And so we did. And then about a week later, it all settled in and I fell into a deep, deep, deep depression. But I had that garden. And that garden was my way back to life. And every morning I would walk the path of that spiral and I would say my gratitudes, what I was grateful for. And the garden taught me that. I can't say that I had any great gratitude or even if I knew that what gratitude was before this happened. And every day as I walked that spiral back out, I prayed. I can't ever say that I really prayed before this time. I can't even say that I knew what prayer was, but I prayed for my life. And all of a sudden I began to understand what that gift that my mother's friend had given me, give what you have, Leah, to someone else. It may mean more than you dare to think. And I have a relationship to story. And I have a relationship to story in such a way where I feel so committed and so clear that this is a gift that we all have to give. And as we play in this gift, the banquet hall becomes so full with nourishment for all of us. So that is a little piece of a story today. And may you give your gifts. May your genius be liberated as you reclaim your place in your ground story. And for those who came for just to play, you can be free, be free. The class is done. And for those who you would like to learn a little bit more about how to jump into this grand old thing with me, I will now talk a little bit about that. So, yeah, Karen, I see that. Okay, so here's what I'm just gonna show you a couple little things. So there's something super magnificent happening very, very soon. And I'm gonna, they always say be careful what you pray for, because you just might get it. And for years I've been praying for ease and grace. And I just had the most outrageous technical things happen where all of my websites, not one, not two, but many of my websites just crashed and burned and can't be put back up. And so I've really had to really live a lot with grace, and so I was like, okay, I got it. Sometimes careful about praying for grace, because then you will call the situations for which you invite grace in, which means that I can't lead you to the website to sign up for my next class, but I can show you something really beautiful. And then I'll also show you a couple of special bundles that I just created in honor of this wild new world. Okay, so this is Mythos. And Mythos was born from, hold on, that's not pretty. Let's see here, there we go. I'm hoping I'm showing you something good. Okay, so Mythos was really born from, Micah was actually in a class that I taught last year called Speak the Spark. And Speak the Spark was really designed to be a class that served as an introduction into the realm of sacred storytelling. And as COVID happened, I really began to feel that we don't need to skim over the surface anymore. We need to go deep. And so what's happening this next year is that I'm offering, rather than just like one class on teaching stories or one class on wisdom stories, I'm actually teaching a 4-week series on each story, so that you can fully embody from conception of the story to writing it, to workshopping the story, to getting some feedback on your telling skills, and then getting to actually tell the story. So the next class that we have is called Mythos. And it's about developing your personal creation story. So I talked a little bit about what is a myth before. And this is like really how to live your biggest story. So this is a story that's not, like, what if I was to tell you the mythic version of my expression with cancer? Okay, so I'm not going to tell you the literal story. That's not what this class is about. There's another class that's about this. This is about seeing your story in a mythic dimension. So, for example, I once had a wild, romantic affair, and it was very confusing for me to understand. Is when we take the story and put it in the mythic dimension, all of a sudden I have a story called When We Were Gods. It was about the story of these two souls that came together, that they were godly in their ways. He was a wolf god and she was a wind goddess, and they couldn't come, but they could only meet once a month under the full moon. They wanted to get to be with each other all the time, so they begged and begged and begged to the gods to let them be humans. The god said, you can be humans, but you're not going to remember each other. So it's their story of becoming human, and then how humans have to lose their godliness. And then remember it, and their journey of remembering who they were and who they were to each other, and could that even continue in the human form. So that is a little brief example of what does it mean to have your true, your story lived in this dimension, but understanding that you're a multidimensional being, and that your soul has a story in relationship to your human expression. And so the mythos is a place where we get to tell your biggest story, the story of your soul. So we begin in, and I'm so sorry, I can't even make this bigger. I asked my designer for a big PDF to show you, but we start in September. So it's for the month of September on Tuesdays from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And anyone who feels called and is like, yes, I want this, what I suggest is when you register today, I actually throw in a bonus of our master teacher library. And this is a class, this is a library of over 30 hours of classes with everyone from Michael Meade to Charles Eisenstein to Carolyn Casey to Stephen Jenkinson. It's an extraordinary breadth of really helping deepen your understanding about what is sacred storytelling, what does that mean. So that usually goes for $197, but I put that in as a bonus for people who register this weekend. So that is, in this class, you'll get to really get creative, you'll get creative inspirations. We'll give you earth-based rituals to actually transmute and work with what you're learning in the human dimension. And then you'll also get performance skills. So that is fun. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat room. Or yeah, if anyone has any questions about that. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, so great. And then I'll tell you about one other thing that you have an option for, which is perhaps class isn't your thing. That's great. We just created these, and this really came out of just realizing that people are in such different places, and there's so much that you can, there's so many different doors into the castle. And so what I realized after doing this for a long time is like, how do we get to really help people get to what they really need, and will serve them about where they are. So that's really where this comes from. And I'm seeing some chats, so hold on, let me get to those. What Valerie's saying, what if I can't join live? So all classes are recorded, and as you can see, it's just way more fun to do it live. It's more interactive, the whole thing. But if you can't join live, all classes are recorded, and so you can watch them on your own. What we do is we will, everyone that comes to class who wants a partner to be with outside of class, which I strongly recommend. I feel like that's just the heartbeat and the glue of what makes it really awesome, is to have that accountability partner and to have that person that you journey with. And people from my past classes that have those creative outside groups, they often stay together and keep working outside the class. So it's a really great opportunity to get a connection with someone who's in alignment with where you are. So you can still do that. You can still show up at the Facebook group. You can upload videos and still get feedback. So we really try to make it work for everybody. And I can't say it's just the same. And then can you send us the JPEG so we can read the full description? Yes, I will. I will. And hopefully, my website will be live up. But until then, I'm just being in the grace of the moment, being with what is. Such fun. Okay, so let's say that the live story isn't your thing, but you're catching the scent of this sacred storytelling thing. So let's say you say, I just want to create my own stories. That's what I'm into. So I have two different ways that you can play. One is, this is a bundle called the Sacred Story Learner. And so I have it's called a Myth, Magic, and Medicine audio class. And Myth, Magic, and Medicine is my approach to entering into the world of sacred storytelling. It's where you get to understand what is a myth, what are stories, which we did a little bit here. You get to really understand your power as a creator and how to change a story, how to work with stories, how to put the story in the mythic dimension, and then also how to bring magic into your world as you bring in that healing and that transformation. So, and also really how to bring your medicine, what is your unique medicine that comes through the stories you tell. So that audio course leads you through that process. And then you also get the Master Teacher Library, which I mentioned to you. And so maybe that's your way of just diving in today. The Sacred Storyteller, this is someone that really wants to work on their telling skills and creation skills. And for you, that gives you a bunch of prompts. And so I have a couple of ebooks for you, in terms of 5 recipes to build your own stories, which is super fun. And I also give you the Creative Catalyst. So if you want 20 prompts to ignite your creativity. And then I also provide you the Love Story Medicine Bundle. And this actually has a soul story, which is a mystical story that's divine in the moment. And it teaches you how to work with your specific love stories. And so that's pretty fun. And that is $33. So let's say that you say, okay, I actually want to get to know myself as a creator. So this is not just I want to be a storyteller, but this is I really want to engage that creator energy in all parts of my life. Maybe I'm an architect, maybe I'm a gardener, maybe I'm doing all these things. And I want to understand what it is to be a conscious creator in our times. So for you, I play with It's the Sacred Story, the Psychic Silence and Creator Matrix Guidebook. So you just got to see one of those exercises out of that guidebook that we played with. I pulled it out of context, but it's a 100-page guide, and it leads you through this process of what I call creating psychic silence, so that you can become a really clear channel in terms of what you came to create. So it's a fun guidebook. It's going to be ready to deliver on August 15th. And then for those of you who want the guidebook plus the video series where I literally walk you through the whole series, you can get that too. I'm teaching a class right now called Sanctuary, where we're using that guidebook. Milana's in this class. And this guidebook is actually the backbone for how we do Sanctuary, and Sanctuary will be happening again in the fall. And basically that's a fully embodied practice of what you create outside of your life is what you create inside. And so it's a fun one. And then if you have any questions, just pop them in there. And then for those of you who say, okay, really what I want to do is I want to work with story as a tool for healing and transformation. I don't care about performance and not so caring about writing, but I really like this idea of this is an additional tool in my self-development work. And so this is also for people who really want to work with the skills with other people. So again, you get that Love Story Medicine Bundle Kit, which I told you about. And then you also get a Tell a Bigger Story video course series. This was a course that I co-taught with Elaine Kalila, who's a trauma specialist. And we work specifically on when you have a major traumatic event. So we actually did this during the time of Me Too. And it was more focused on those kinds of issues, but it can really apply to the structure of it can apply to any kind of trauma. And it really works with you in that process of how to change a story, how to cultivate the things that happened, and so understand that you're not the same person on the other side. And then you also get the Sanctuary speaker series in this one. So this is a different kind of speaker series. The other one was the Master Guide ones on storytelling. The Sanctuary speaker series, these are people that are really about teaching you the embodiment of the metaphor of becoming a sacred storyteller. And so you actually get classes on anointing, on permaculture, on creating inner sanctuary. It really prepares you to be that storyteller. Okay, and the last one that I'll tell you about today is for the myth lover. This is just, you just want to listen to some stories. You don't care about making it, you just want to receive. And so for you, we have 2 audio stories. One I mentioned, When We Were Gods. The other one was The Day I Married a Polar Bear. And also you get a 2-month subscription to my Hour of the Wolf online soul story council, which is a form of ancient divine stories where we meet once a month to call in a story to serve our times. And then for those of you who are like, wait, I just want all in, like I'm into it. I want to really experience myself as a sacred storyteller, and understanding that when we come into this path, it's like saying yes to elderhood. It's like saying yes to playing a role in my community and giving my gifts to the world. And so in that way, what we offer is a year-long subscription to Hour of the Wolf. You get everything above. You get the Master Teacher Library. You get the Sanctuary Spirit series. You get to participate in 2 live classes. So I'll be teaching a lot of classes throughout the next year, a new one each month, and you get to choose whichever 2 you want. You also get a private session with me where we do what I call sacred storytelling priestessing, which is not just story coaching, but it's the kind of everything looking at you as a creator and what you are wanting to create and what wants to be created through you. And so if you're all into that, then you get a membership to the School of Sacred Storytelling. So there's more, but I'm going to stop there just in terms of those are the doors that we just created. We're like, how do people get inside the castle in the way that most fits your unique desire? And so that's what we've created for you. And this document will be given to you. And then, the last thing that I'll tell you is that for those who really are ready to go into a masterclass, I'm going to be hosting a very, very small group this year, and it's called the Artemis Circle, and it's an advanced course for those who are really committed to working with story as a sacred healing art, both for the individual and the collective. And so they're learning both story skills, performance skills, but also facilitation, group process, and we'll have several assignments of how to really bring their story into the world and into their communities during this time. So if you want more information about that, there's an application process, and you can email me at info@leolam.com. Whew, that was a mouthful. So on that note, any questions, inquiries, last thoughts? Yes, Mary, all of this info will go out in an email. Great. All right. Well, may the day treat you well. And I look forward to connecting on the other side of it all. Bye. I'll take you all off mute.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was beautiful. I cried. You win the
Thank
prize.
You.
Aw.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a great day. Tell your stories.